The anime begins with Taihei Doma narrating how his sister Umaru Doma is a kind, intelligent, and very popular person that everyone adores. However, appearances can be deceiving, as upon arriving home, his younger sister turns into a little slacker. Later, Umaru is checking her PC because people are talking about her, but her brother asks her to have dinner since he prepared a meal. She claims to be busy and asks him to feed her, but he refuses, so the girl has no choice but to drag herself to the table. When she tries the first bite, she complains that it's cold and doesn't understand why this is the food since they eat sandwiches on Tuesdays. But upon realizing it's Monday, she panics because it's the day her favorite manga's new issue is released. She begs her brother to go buy it, but Taihei refuses, saying he's exhausted from work and that she should buy it after school. The young girl protests, saying she can't because people would see her and she must maintain her image due to rumors that have spiraled out of control, like her quietly reading in the library. Hearing her brother's refusal, Umaru throws herself on the bed and starts throwing a tantrum. Taihei reflects on how it's been a year since his younger sister came to live with him and how she has become lazy over time, worrying that she won't be able to face the world in the future. Umaru pleads, thinking she's succeeded, but it's not the case. When she sees her brother still refusing, she begins to cry, leaving Taihei no choice but to buy her the manga. However, he ends up annoyed and warns her that this is the last time he'll do it, as she needs to learn to control herself. Umaru, however, asks him to be quiet because the manga is interesting. The next day, Umaru's classmates notice that she has dark circles under her eyes. She explains that she just had an argument with her brother, which makes everyone upset with him, but the truth is different. That night, Umaru is playing with her hamsters and tells her brother that she craves steak. She mentions wanting to teach them tricks and participate in a contest to win $1,000,000, but more importantly, she wants the hamsters to be under her control so they can fetch things for her or transport them without her lifting a finger, though her brother isn't too keen on the idea. Later, Taihei recalls that he bought the hamsters 6 months ago, but had a tough time when Umaru used her charm to make him look bad and comply with her request. The following day, Umaru goes to school with her best friend Ebina, but she feels uncomfortable because all the attention is on Doma, and she doesn't feel as pretty. Then the students receive their exam scores, and a girl named Sylphynford Tachibana, who considers herself a rival of the protagonist, challenges her to a competition based on grades. However, after realizing she lost, she decides to leave but vows to return. Meanwhile, Ebina feels down after failing the exam. Later, the students are in swimming class and everyone is surprised that Umaru arrives first, even being the swimmer Motoba. She also charms everyone with her piano melodies. When she returns home, Ebina comments on how skilled she is. After saying goodbye, Doma reverts to her usual appearance and immediately crawls around the house until she turns on her PC to entertain herself. Later, Taihei sees his sister's grades and wonders how she can pass everything if she's so lazy. The next day, two students watch the protagonist and wonder what a beautiful girl like her is thinking as she gazes at the sky. But Umaru is only thinking about the junk food she'll eat later. Once she gets home, she decides to watch movies while enjoying her junk food with a tasty drink, spending the whole day this way until she falls asleep. That night, her brother wakes her up for dinner, having prepared meat just because she asked him to. However, she claims to be satisfied and says she won't eat. The next day, the siblings spend the morning playing video games, where Taihei loses every match. But when he sees the time, he says he needs to go shopping. On the way, he notices that his sister is upset, to the point where she won't even talk to him. Upon arriving at the supermarket, the young man tries not to draw attention to himself, as it could be counterproductive, so he decides to buy Umaru an ice cream, which seems like a good idea, but she has a little accident with it and ends up upset again. When they return home, Taihei realizes why his sister is upset, so he asks her to help him with the shopping bags, and when they return, they continue playing video games, which makes her happy, and she wins again. On a new day, Taihei returns home very tired, but he knows that the real danger is just beginning. However, upon entering his house, he sees 2 pairs of shoes, which surprises him. At that moment, Umaru appears with her cute girl appearance, treating him kindly upon his arrival, but this is because Ebina has come to visit. Once the young man enters the bedroom, he sees the student, but he is even more astonished to find everything clean, even noticing that his sister has hidden her manga boxes. This makes him very happy, to the point where he thanks Ebina and tells her she is welcome anytime. As the night ends, Ebina says goodbye and Umaru returns to her lazy appearance. However, Taihei has nothing to reproach her for since she managed to get his sister to clean and maybe her friend can help her improve. But later, he sees that the bathroom is full of boxes and dirt from the apartment, which annoys him, leading to an argument while Nana Ebina at her home comments that her friend's brother is very kind. During Sunday, Umaru spent the whole night playing, so she says she's bored and has to wait for her favorite show to start. She notices that her brother is sleeping since he worked all week and is tired, but this doesn't matter to her. She decides to wake him up to play video games with her because she is bored. The young man, annoyed, asks her to let him sleep, but she comes up with a plan and lies down next to him so he can't sleep. However, Umaru ends up falling asleep while Taihei realizes her plan didn't work and says he will play with her when he wakes up. When they both wake up, Umaru is upset because she missed her favorite show and blames her brother for it. When Umaru and Ebina are on their way home, a woman hands them a flyer for a contest where a stuffed toy is at stake, which excites the protagonist. Upon returning home, she asks her brother to accompany her for an emergency. The next day, the siblings head out, and Taihei notices the contest, getting annoyed because it made him lose a day of work. However, he realizes he doesn't spend much time with Umaru, so he agrees to go. Nevertheless, the girl goes one way while sending Taihei off in another direction. After standing in a long line, the contest finally begins, which annoys him, but in the end, Taihei makes it to the finals, surprising him to find that his rival is Ebina. When they return home, the boy is the one carrying the big stuffed toy since he won. But seeing that the girl is a bit nervous, he decides to give it to her, saying she probably wants it more than he does. The girl accepts the gift and goes back home, but Umaru, who was behind them, ends up angry because she was present at the contest watching how he won only for her brother to give away his prize. A few days later, Taihei decides to buy the stuffed toy online with his own money. After a few days, Umaru sees that a new game has gone on sale and asks her brother to buy it for her, but he refuses. Then they both go shopping, and on the way, she says she has a plan and will throw a tantrum in public to get him to buy it for her, even though the young man insists that no matter how much she throws a tantrum, he won't buy it. When they are at the supermarket, the girl is ready to execute her plan, but Ebina shows up and Umaru has no choice but to pretend to be fine. However, Taihei gets the idea to invite the girl to lunch so that his sister can't do anything. At the restaurant, Ebina is very nervous since it's her first time in a family restaurant, while Umaru is upset because she doesn't know how to get her brother's attention and make him buy the game, as Taihei is completely ignoring her. However, at one point, Umaru gets angry and starts throwing a tantrum in front of her friend, which leads the siblings to realize that Ebina is right in front of them. But the girl didn't pay them any attention because she was focused on the food, which saved Umaru. In the end, the protagonist ends up happy since her brother bought her the game. The next day, Ebina waits for her friend, but a neighbor appears and says she always waits for her to go to classes, so they have become very good friends. This makes the girl remember when she traveled to Japan and told her parents she would be fine since she knows the language and bought fashionable clothes. However, since the trip, she's been very nervous because she felt how people looked at her, even upon arriving in the city, but she realizes that none of them looked her in the eye. However, upon arriving at her residence, she crossed paths with Taihei, who was the first to greet her and look her in the eye. This made her nervous, but the young man was very kind to her. After remembering those times, Umaru arrives with Taihei, and the friends go to class together, although Ebina appears very nervous when she is with Taihei. On a school day, Umaru goes to the front to solve a formula, prompting the teacher to remind the students not to forget it since it will be on the exam. However, Tachibana stands up just to interrupt the class and tells the protagonist that she will beat her in the exams and come in first, but no one seems to care. Nevertheless, Umaru notices that one girl has a different attitude towards her. Later, Umaru returns home thinking about that girl and wonders if it's because everyone is anxious about the exams. Meanwhile, Ebina is beside her and says she will probably do poorly on the next exam since she made many mistakes on the previous one. However, her friend tries to encourage her, saying that even she makes mistakes, having lost her identification card, so they should support each other and study. Despite this, Umaru spends her days playing video games, and her brother asks her to study. Seeing her lack of interest, he mentions that she probably won't have problems since she has good grades, even though exams tend to have tricky questions. This makes her think, and that night she even has nightmares about studying. After waking up in the middle of the night, she asks her brother for help. A few days later, the exam results are announced and Umaru comes in first, which astonishes everyone. They even ask her if she has private tutoring, but she says she actually has a tutor, thinking about her brother. A few days later, Umaru is in class, but the students start talking about how pretty she is. However, one of them mentions a rumor that Umaru's father is the president of a company, which surprises the boys and makes them understand why she is so smart. They also say there's someone who seems not to like her, suspecting it to be Tachibana. However, it's not her, but Kirie Motoba, who has been watching her unfavorably all week. When the protagonist returns home with her friend, they talk about Motoba and how she has been observing her every moment. Ebina tells her that she is not a bad person, although everyone is scared of her, so she's probably just shy. But when Umaru gets home, she thinks that maybe Motoba is mean to her because she discovered her secret. However, it's not something that concerns her at the moment, as she remembers there's a new mission in her game. After a few hours, Umaru starts to feel hungry and wonders when her brother will arrive. Seeing that it's Wednesday, she thinks he might have gone grocery shopping to prepare meat. At that moment, she hears the door, so she rushes to answer, believing it's her brother. However, she is surprised to see Motoba there. The protagonist doesn't know what to do since she's in her lazy, otaku appearance. Nevertheless, she lets her in because the girl doesn't recognize her and thinks she is Umaru's younger sister. Umaru doesn't waste time and introduces herself as Komaru. At that moment, Umaru realizes that the girl is not a bad person. She is just shy, as Kirie explains that she has been watching Umaru all week because she didn't know how to return her lost identification card. At that moment, Taihei arrives and is surprised to see his sister in that state with a classmate, so they later say they just met. Later, Kirie asks Komaru to call her teacher, although she tries to say something after thinking about Umaru but hesitates. The next day, the girls return to class and all the students back away from Motoba when they see her pass. At that moment, Umaru appears and thanks her classmate for playing with her little sister, inviting her to go home together. However, when the girls return home, Motoba feels very happy to be with Umaru, but then sees that Ebina is there too, which annoys her, and she decides to leave quickly. When Kirie visits Komaru, she tells her that she has a rival to defeat, while Umaru doesn't understand what's wrong. At night, the siblings decide to watch a horror movie, so Umaru tries to pretend that she's not scared. However, later she ends up alone since Taihei goes out to buy something. When she's alone, she starts hearing noises and the light goes out along with the movie, causing her to scream in fright. At that moment, her brother returns, and after changing since it was raining, they decide to continue watching the movie. On a new day, Umaru walks through the city with her friend while everyone stares at her. She stops to look at a game store, but since she's with Ebina, she decides to leave. However, later she returns in disguise, and as she enters, everyone notices her presence. In that store, she is known as UMR, who always ranks at the top of the game records. The staff begins to follow her because they don't want her to win all the prizes and leave them with nothing. Despite her cheating at the games, Umaru manages to win a large number of stuffed animals from the claw machines, leaving the staff in despair. When Umaru returns home, Taihei is surprised to see that his sister has won so many stuffed animals. He thinks she doesn't need that many, but he knows she likes them. The next day, Taihei tries to wake his sister for class since she has tennis lessons today, but she doesn't want to get up. Eventually, she ends up going. In class, she admits that she has only played tennis in video games and has watched it in anime. At that moment, Tachibana shows up to challenge Umaru to a match, hoping to finally beat her. Although Umaru doesn't want to, they set up the teams. Umaru with Kirie and Tachibana with Ebina, who apparently isn't very good at playing. When the match begins, the students are excited. Tachibana serves perfectly to the point that Umaru can't even see it. Her rival feels she has a chance, but Motoba manages to return it. The match starts and Doma sees that Sylphynford is giving her all to win, which she takes seriously too, although by the time she returns home, she is exhausted and can't move. A few days later, Taihei is at work when one of his colleagues tells him he visited relatives and decided to buy a souvenir. When he returns home, he and Umaru open the gift and see it's a porcelain ornament. Umaru doesn't like it much, but Taihei appreciates that his colleague thought of him, so he puts it away and warns Umaru not to touch it because she'll break it. Despite Taihei's warnings, Umaru takes the ornament out to play with her hamsters, but in a moment of carelessness, she drops it and breaks it. This sends her into a panic, and she immediately tries to fix it using her skills. Although she manages to make it look brand new, she realizes she needs to draw its face, which she can't remember. She tries to recall how it looks, but it doesn't work. When her brother comes home, she decides to confess the truth. Taihei isn't upset since she was honest, but he wonders where she got so many materials. Umaru is relieved to have escaped, so she confesses that she used his card to make the purchases, which ends up infuriating him. The next day, Umaru is playing video games and realizes she needs to improve her techniques. Her brother arrives to show her that there will be a tournament and asks her to go. After a few days, the siblings attend the tournament, but Umaru goes to register, leaving her brother alone. At that moment, her co-worker Alex appears, and they both say they came with their sisters. Later, the tournament begins and the players are introduced to the audience. First up is the previous tournament winner, UMR. Taihei is surprised because his sister didn't tell him anything. Then the others are introduced, and the last is Tachibana, who claims she will win. The grand final is between UMR and Tachibana. Despite being the reigning champion, Umaru is about to lose, so she looks at her brother and says she wants to show him how good she is. Sylphynford also glances at Alex, which makes her nervous, and she runs away, leaving the victory to Umaru. But before she can leave, Alex stops her. The next day, Umaru doesn't understand why her classmate acted that way, but seeing her in high spirits, she knows she's actually okay. At school, it's the last day of classes before vacation, so the grades of all the students are posted in order of score. Umaru comes in first place and everyone congratulates her, but Ebina ends up in one of the last places. At that moment, Tachibana appears with her positive energy, but with the thought of defeating Umaru another time. The next day, Umaru is at the arcade to spend the afternoon since it's day. While she is playing, Tachibana recognizes her from behind as UMR and immediately puts on her mask so that she won't be recognized. Her rival says she still has unfinished business with her, even mentioning she has a rival named Umaru. To defeat her classmate, she first has to defeat UMR, so she invites Umaru to play a fighting video game. However, Umaru says she didn't bring her custom controller, so they only end up playing chance games, where Sylphynford wins 5,000 coins but thinks they're not important and gives them to an elderly man nearby. Then the girls spend the day competing in all the games, and Umaru wonders why Tachibana wants to win so badly when most people come to have fun. She gives Tachibana a prize so she can consider herself a winner, which makes Tachibana happy. Sylphynford then tells her that in the end, rivals can become friends and asks her to team up to defeat Umaru, which the protagonist doesn't know how to respond to but eventually agrees. The next day, Umaru spends the day playing with Kirie, who has come to visit her. However, her friend won't stop pampering her, so Komaru says this is making her a bad person, no matter how nice her new friend is. In the end, the protagonist falls asleep, which Kirie can't resist, saying her master is so cute that she wants to keep that memory. She goes out to look for her phone, but Umaru stops her. Even while asleep, she climbs over her clothes, which makes Kirie feel so much affection that she ends up on the floor hugging Komaru. Later, Taihei comes home after spending the whole day working in the heat. When he sees the girls sleeping peacefully under the air conditioning, he gets annoyed, turns it off, and opens the window to let in the heat, which works as they end up waking up. Umaru is ready to take her bath, showing how she takes a shower and saying that she loves taking bubble baths while enjoying some delicious chips and playing video games to not waste time. Sometimes she reads manga. However, after a while the bubbles run out and she wishes she could have more, but her brother prohibited her from using too much. She then remembers where she stored them, sneaks out of the bathroom, and quietly goes to her brother's drawer to take some, but Taihei almost discovers her. Finally, Umaru enjoys a lovely bubble bath, but spends so much time there that she starts feeling and thirsty. So when she comes out, she enjoys a refreshing drink but slips on the water and ends up spilling it all over herself. After a few days, Taihei notices that his sister only has clothes for staying at home, so he gives her money to buy clothes for going out, asking her to spend it only on clothes and to go shopping with her friends. Later, Ebina and Umaru wait for Motoba, and when she arrives, the protagonist realizes that she still doesn't like her friend. When the three are at the mall, they decide to look at all the stores before shopping. However, when they enter the first store, Umaru is shocked to see the price of a dress, as she could buy many drinks with that money. At that moment, the salesperson appears but leaves upon seeing Kirie. However, Doma notices that the young girl still can't be friends with Ebina, so she plans to try on clothes to make them both feel comfortable. In the end, the girls split up to buy the clothes they liked, but when Umaru goes for the dress she saw, she passes by a game store and wants to buy a new game. She remembers that her brother asked her to spend the money only on clothes, but she ends up buying the game anyway and buys some regular clothes with what's left. Finally, classes start and Taihei faces a tough time waking his sister, who doesn't want to go back to school. Even when she wakes up, she asks him to hurry since Ebina must be waiting for her. Later, the girls go to class while Taihei heads to work, where he spends the whole day working on a project that his boss doesn't like and asks him to redo. During lunch, one of the boys says Taihei's homemade food is delicious, wondering if his girlfriend made it. The young man says it's actually his sister who is a normal person. They chat while the girl listens to them. At the end of the day, Taihei returns home, sees that Umaru is sleeping, and immediately wakes her up, telling her he will prepare meat since he wants it. A few days later, Taihei asks his sister to go to sleep since it's very late, but she isn't tired. So she waits for her brother to fall asleep so she can spend the night eating junk food and playing video games. However, at one point, she starts to get thirsty and, upon opening the fridge, realizes that there's no drink she likes. This leaves her with no choice but to go out and buy something in the middle of the night. Then, like a spy, she goes undercover, but she worries that a strange, bad person might appear. Instead, she gets startled by a little cat. Nevertheless, she runs to the store where she finds only one person working. After finishing her shopping, she decides to head back, enjoying the feeling of being alone at night. However, upon returning home, Taihei is waiting for her, annoyed because she left without saying anything. The next day, the girl goes to class very tired since she stayed up late. On a new day, Umaru is upset because she has to go to class while her brother is on vacation. For him, it's a good time to take care of the house and clean, but he realizes all the chores are done, leaving him bored to the point that he doesn't know what to do. He decides to cook, but has to wait a few hours for the meat to cook, so he lies down and falls asleep. Later, Umaru wakes him up after returning from school, and he remembers he left the food on the stove, but has gone out. The next day, Taihei starts working at home since he needs to finish his speech, but he is constantly interrupted by his sister. He then gets the idea to put up a curtain to divide the room. Umaru doesn't like it at first, but then thinks that this way her brother won't scold her for being lazy, so she agrees. Finally, the kids separate the room and Taihei is quietly working, but Umaru feels lonely and starts bothering her brother, trying to get to his side. He realizes this and suggests opening the curtain so she can feel comfortable. The following day, Umaru asks her brother if she can buy something. However, hours earlier, she had been hanging out with Kirie, and when Taihei arrives, Motoba gets very nervous, but the young man thinks he's getting used to her presence. Later, Umaru suggests that they all play a life simulation game. Kirie is unsure, so her brother asks her not to pressure her, but they all end up playing. During the game, Umaru does very well, winning a lot of money, while her brother earns little because he didn't want to change his job, feeling it was too personal. Eventually, he becomes a chef who opens his own restaurant and earns a lot of money with his family, while Kirie spends her life as a professional swimmer but ends up quitting due to an injury, losing her money and ending up. Seeing her situation, Taihei decides to sell his restaurant, saying that his family is large and this way he will be the same as Motoba. She thanks him, but in her nervousness, she breaks her friend's console. Meanwhile, due to the game, Taihei becomes interested in the cooking profession. It's Umaru's birthday, so she wakes up early thinking about what to ask her brother for her birthday, or maybe she'll ask for everything. At that moment, Taihei wakes up but is very distant with her, so she goes to class thinking her brother forgot her birthday. However, in class, her classmates didn't forget, as they brought many gifts and congratulated her. Then Kirie, very shy, appears and also gives her a gift, surprising the girls. Still, the protagonist thinks about her brother and starts to remember what he said before she left, believing that maybe he does remember. Meanwhile, Tachibana waits outside the school for her rival, as despite being enemies, there's a truce on birthdays. She prepares to give her a bouquet of flowers, but the girl leaves so quickly that Sylphynford doesn't have time to give her the gift. Umaru is rushing home, thinking that her brother was faking, and when she arrives, she realizes she was right, as she surprises Taihei decorating their house for her birthday, which embarrasses him and makes him blush. On a new day, Taihei has a day off, but Umaru spends her time lounging around as always, which annoys her brother since she only calls him to bring her food or drinks while she does nothing and he cleans. However, the young man notices a box on the floor, so he asks his younger sister if she needs it. She says no while playing video games, so he decides to throw it in the trash and take it outside. Later, when he returns, Umaru desperately asks about the box since it was for her collectible doll. When she finds out it went in the trash, she gets upset and blames her brother, but he tells her he was just obeying what she said. However, he sees that Taihei is somewhat worried, and she takes advantage of it to cry and play the victim, saying she never wants to see him again. Later, the girl wakes up and sees that her brother is not there, causing her to panic as she thinks he left because of her. At that moment, he enters the house and says he just went out to buy something. He shows her a Japanese doll he bought since he couldn't find the one she had before, which makes her realize that he cared about her. The next day, everything seems normal, which is strange for Taihei, but Umaru says the box wasn't that important. The following day, Ebina invites the Doma siblings to lunch, just to return the favor from the last time. They arrive at a restaurant where Taihei doesn't seem very convinced about the place since he sees there's a lot of oil and suspects the ramen might be like that. When the food arrives, Umaru tastes it and is fascinated, but in her mind, she thinks the oil makes the ramen junk food, though she behaves calmly on the outside, wishing to have her favorite drink. Taihei, however, says his food is too spicy, so he swaps his plate with his sister's, while Ebina watches the siblings. After they finish, the guys thank their neighbor and agree to return to the place, even though Taihei doesn't like the idea much. A few days later, Taihei meets up with one of his classmates named Bomber, who is feeling sentimental after attending a bachelor party and is lonely. He then asks Taihei if he's living with his girlfriend since many acquaintances saw him with a pretty girl even going shopping. Taihei says it's his sister, but Bomber doesn't believe him, so he insists on going to his house. Despite Taihei's refusal, his friend manages to follow him, prompting Taihei to warn Umaru. When they arrive at home, they find Umaru asleep. Taihei tells Bomber that she's his sister, and now that he's confirmed it, he can leave. However, Bomber wants to stay and admire her since he finds her very cute. Eventually, the boys wake her up, and upon seeing her brother's friend, she panics, thinking it's her brother with different hair. Later, Bomber returns home and meets his sister, Kirie, since Bomber's real name is Kirie Motoba. He starts treating his younger sister like a little girl, but she annoyingly asks him to leave her room. After a few days, Umaru and Tachibana meet up, and the blue-haired girl says she wants to go to a candy store. The protagonist takes her to an old candy shop she discovered months ago, which has retro games and products. Sylphynford gets excited, but before leaving they decide to buy some sweets. Umaru is delighted to see different candies of her favorite drink, which they end up choosing all, while Tachibana picks a yogurt she used to eat when she was little. However, no one serves them, so they both shout loudly to get the lady's attention. In the end, they are thrilled with the sweets they chose. After a few days, Taihei goes about his usual workday, but on his way home he crosses paths with a cat which catches his attention and he ends up following it. However, the young man gets lost and doesn't know where to go until he finds a familiar sign, though he can't remember when he saw it. As he keeps walking, he finds the cat again, which shows him affection. At that moment, the young man recalls that he was with someone else, realizing it was from his childhood, and now he knows how to get back. He tells the cat to take care, but he knows that when he gets home, he'll need to prepare dinner for his sister. After a few days, Umaru wakes up and sees that it's snowing, so she immediately wakes her brother, who is dreaming about cats. The first thing her little sister tells him is that it's snowing, and she has plans for the day to play video games. However, Taihei mentions that he was planning to set up a kotatsu, which excites Umaru, and she decides to help him. But first, they need to clean up his mess, so they both start organizing everything, although the protagonist gets distracted by her manga. In the end, they manage to assemble the kotatsu, and Umaru takes the opportunity to bring her things. However, she falls asleep instantly, and the siblings enjoy a lovely day covered up just like all their friends. It's Christmas Eve, and Umaru is waiting for her brother's arrival, but Taihei is working overtime with Bomber, who is fed up and angry about being made to work. He's worried about renting a Santa Claus costume to surprise his sister Kirie. At that moment, his boss Kanakangu arrives and tells him he can quit whenever he wants, although she apologizes to Taihei for having him work. Meanwhile, Umaru continues to wait for her brother. At that moment, she hears the door and thinks Taihei has his key, so she goes to answer it and finds Kirie, who has come to visit and bring her a gift. Taihei is also there, dressed as Santa. Bomber arrives at his house to surprise his sister, but doesn't find her. A few days later, it's New Year's Eve, and Bomber is at Taihei's house with Umaru, where he mentions that he waited for his sister to come back, but she hit him because he was hiding to surprise her. Umaru then says she feels like eating ramen, so they decide to go back to the restaurant with Ebina. Later, the siblings reflect on how incredible the year was, and the girl realizes she spent a lot of time with her friend. Even Kirie is now her friend, and without thinking, she spent time with Sylphynford. Then Takeshi mentions it's getting late, so they need to prepare for the celebration and the countdown. He brought a lot of delicious food and drinks to share with his friend, but Taihei says he wasn't planning to drink since his sister is there. However, when Umaru sees this, she is surprised and immediately brings her favorite junk food and drinks for a toast, which the young man has no choice but to accept. As time passes, Umaru ends up falling asleep, so the guys decide not to wake her for the countdown and step out to the balcony to toast. The next day, Umaru is lazing around as usual, but Taihei arrives annoyed because he says his sister promised to be more responsible in the new year. The girl claims she doesn't remember it, but after thinking, she admits it's true, though she never specified a date. Later, the siblings go to the temple to make wishes. Before that, they check their fortunes, and both of them have good results. After making their wishes, they return home, but Umaru says she wishes to eat meat, though she still thinks she never told her brother a date to be more responsible. On Christmas Eve, Kanao goes to see her employees working overtime. Taihei asks if she would like to spend time together like old times since they were schoolmates, but although she wants to accept, she declines and asks them to return home to be with their families. However, she runs into the guys at a store, where Bomber mentions that he probably has no one to spend Christmas with. Hearing this, she decides to leave while the guys buy their Santa Claus costume, but Kanao receives a photo of the guys in costume, although she is only interested in seeing Taihei. After a few days, Kirie is at home preparing cookies to give to Umaru and Komaru, but her preparations don't go well as the dough breaks or they burn in the oven. Then her brother Takeshi, who has been watching her for a while, asks if something good happened, but she denies it and indirectly asks him to leave. Finally, after much effort, Kirie arrives at class feeling very nervous but gathers her courage to talk to Umaru. However, she trips and falls along with the cookies. The protagonist notices this and happily eats one, saying it's very tasty and thanking her. Later, she brings the cookies to Komaru, who is also delighted with them, making Kirie happy, although she also leaves a package for Taihei. However, when Motoba arrives home, he realizes that he left the young man burnt cookies. A few days later, Ebina sees a store selling chocolate, so she decides to prepare some treats with her friend Umaru. The girls are very excited, but when the protagonist looks at the recipe, she decides to step out for a moment, returning with her brother for help. Taihei says he's busy, but his sister isn't interested in that. Very shyly, Ebina asks him to stay, although she's astonished by her neighbor's kitchen. Later, they start preparing their chocolates following Taihei's instructions, which makes Umaru wonder who her friend wants to gift the chocolates to. After spending the afternoon cooking, the girls finish their preparations with Ebina writing "Dear" on her chocolate. Realizing this, she gets nervous because she can't erase it, so she decides to write her name in a way that raises no suspicions. One morning, Umaru is lying in her house thinking about which anime to watch, but she gets a call from Tachibana claiming it's an emergency, so she quickly arrives in her costume. However, Tachibana just wanted to show her the DVD she bought, which Umaru was also waiting for. For the protagonist, that store is new, and seeing that her classmate likes the same things as her, they decide to stay and explore the store. In the end, the girls decide to take a break, during which Tachibana mentions that she really likes anime, just like her older brother, but they don't usually watch it together. Umaru also shares that she has an older brother who has different tastes, and Sylphynford is glad they have things in common, although understanding the hobbies of loved ones is also nice. Later, when Umaru is at home, her brother tells her he's going to cook, making the girl remember what her classmates said, and she asks Taihei if she can help. He thinks she's sick, since that's not typical of her. The next day, Umaru leaves her house, but at that same moment, Kirie arrives. When she enters, Taihei tells her that his sister isn't home but will likely return soon. However, all day the girl waits for her little friend while behaving very shyly around the young man. He thought they were making progress and finds it easy to talk, but now he sees that's not the case. To break the ice, Taihei tells her the cookies were delicious, which isn't true, and Kirie knows it. At the end of the day, the girl gathers her courage and confesses that she brought the wrong cookies, those meant for him. At that moment, Umaru arrives and her brother acts annoyed because she came home very late, but the young girl tries to hide this because her friend is there. That night, Taihei comes home from work very tired but sees that his little sister is sleeping, although there's a flan on the table. The next day, Umaru wakes up and sees her flan is gone, so she blames Taihei for it. But he claims innocence. They begin to recall what they did the previous night. Umaru confesses that after receiving her brother's message, she decided to have a big junk food feast but left the flan for last, though she fell asleep. Taihei mentions that he returned at midnight but doesn't remember what he did, so for Umaru, there's nothing more to say. However, the young man thinks of making more flan to recall what happened. After an hour, the dessert is ready, and when Umaru takes her first bite, she remembers that when her brother arrived, she woke up while still half asleep and ate the flan, trying to act like she didn't know. Taihei, however, already knows the truth and gets upset about it. The next day, Taihei is about to leave for work but sees that his sister is sleeping on the floor. Because of this, she ends up getting sick, so he tells her to stay in bed. However, Umaru claims she isn't that sick but plans to use her brother to take care of her. Still, the guy insists he has to go to work and get sick because he didn't listen to her, so he needs to reflect on this. Once he leaves, the girl takes the opportunity to watch TV. The following day, Umaru wakes up feeling like new, claiming the virus only lasted a day because her body became lazy. However, now Taihei is the sick one, and when he wakes up, he asks the girl not to make so much noise. She takes advantage of this to call work and inform them that her brother won't be going in, which Taihei doesn't appreciate. While Taihei rests, Umaru seizes the opportunity to go shopping to take care of her brother, but she actually has a wicked plan for revenge because he left her alone when she was sick. When she returns, she sees that her brother isn't well, which makes her worry and feel guilty because Taihei is fighting the virus. Later, the young man wakes up feeling better, but sees his little sister by his side taking care of him, which he appreciates a lot. During dinner, the siblings are about to eat, but Taihei notices that Umaru didn't try the peppers, which annoys him since it took a lot of time to prepare them for her. Still, she refuses and only manages to eat one, so the rest has to be saved. The next day, the young man prepares lunch for his sister, but she feels like it has the peppers she didn't eat. At school, Ebina and Umaru share lunch, and the girl says she prepares food for her brother, even though it's the other way around. However, when she opens the wrapping, she sees that Taihei made a delicious lunch, although the peppers are hidden in the burger. Ebina tells her that it's a lot of effort to do that, especially in the morning. When Umaru gets home, she lets Taihei know that she ate the lunch, and from that moment on, she will start eating the peppers he prepares, which Taihei finds strange for his sister to say. One afternoon, Umaru is at home enjoying her day watching videos, but in a moment of carelessness, she spills her drink. Despite trying to catch it, she fails, causing the drink to fall under her brother's desk. She notices that one of the devices is covered in her drink, and at that moment, it turns off, causing her concern. When she checks her PC, she finds she has lost the internet, so she decides to look for a solution on her tablet, but it also has no internet, leading her to a crisis of being disconnected from the world. Later, Taihei comes home with Takeshi, and upon seeing the device, they need to fix it. But first, They worry about cheering Umaru up and spend the day playing together without using any devices, which Taihei enjoys, seeing his sister have fun without her vices. After the siblings run out of internet, Taihei gives Umaru money to go to a maid cafe to pass the time, and she is very excited from the moment she arrives, asking to stay for 7 hours. She sees that at the cafe, she can do whatever she wants, like being at home, even ordering lots of manga and food to pass the time while exploring the internet. However, after a few hours, she gets tired and decides to return home even though she has 4 hours left. 10 years ago, Taihei was in middle school with his friends Takashi and Kanao. In class, grades are announced, surprising the students when the boy scores another 100 points. Later, the trio decides to go to the arcade to hang out, leading to a competition between the girl and Bomber to see who can win stuffed animals from the machine, but neither can until Taihei has an idea that ends up working, and he wins 3 stuffed animals, one for each of them. When the young man returns home, he finds his sister and gives her the stuffed animal as a gift. However, in the present, it is Umaru who spends a lot of time at the machines and wins many stuffed animals, although she still keeps the one her brother gave her. After a few days, Umaru is looking through some magazines and seeing a pizza brochure. She suggests to her brother that they order one for lunch, but he refuses. At that moment, there's a knock at the door, and it's Ebina, who has come to drop off rice that her parents sent. The young man kindly accepts it, but everyone hears Ebina's stomach growling, so they invite her to stay for lunch, as this is a great opportunity for Taihei to get his sister to eat vegetables. When the food is ready, Umaru feels a bit sad because she was hoping to eat pizza, but when she tries the rice, she likes it a lot, just like Ebina, who gets nervous and ends up speaking in a different accent. Once they finish eating, the neighbor thanks them for the invitation, but upon seeing the pizza brochure, her stomach growls again. So they propose ordering a medium pizza to share, which Umaru thinks is a great idea. The next day, Taihei heads to work with his colleagues for a proposal meeting, but the guys are feeling down because their proposals are never chosen. Meanwhile, Umaru is at the supermarket shopping but can't decide what to buy as she has different ideas and wants to change her usual purchases. In her head, a small debate begins with other versions of herself to help her choose what to buy. By the end of the day, Taihei returns home and Umaru approaches him with a package of sweet cookies she bought to cheer him up for the meeting. She thought he would be upset, but instead, her brother thanks her and asks how she knew they would choose his project, surprising the girl. The following day, Umaru tells her friend that Taihei's proposal was chosen at work, so she invites her to celebrate the victory with them. On Sunday, the group gathers and goes to a candy shop, but Ebina is nervous, fearing her stomach will growl again like before. Because of this, when it's time to order drinks, she orders the same thing as Umaru, but upon seeing how much it is, she feels embarrassed while Doma eats his dessert nonchalantly. They both try to shake off their embarrassment and finish their desserts, but still feeling hungry, they order another one, which surprises Taihei, who thought they wouldn't be able to finish their ice cream. During the stormy season, Umaru feels a bit down because her mood is dampened by the rainy weather, making her lack the motivation to do anything. For Taihei, this is not new, but he ends up getting scared when he sees Kirie, who he hadn't noticed before. She expresses that she doesn't like rainy days as they remind her of a bad moment, while Taihei gets scared just by looking at her expression. Because of this, the young man tries to lift their spirits, suggesting they think about the sound of rain since it brings peace, but it doesn't work. So he tells them that once this season is over, summer will arrive, and they can go to the beach with their friend Bomber, whom Kirie says she doesn't know. Despite her nerves about meeting someone new, she agrees. The young man also tells them that in the summer, they'll enjoy ice cream more, which cheers up Umaru as she thinks of all the ice creams she can eat along with her favorite drinks, boosting the spirits of both girls. A few days later, Taihei wakes his sister to show her that summer has arrived, making her very happy. After a few days, Umaru enjoys some moments with her friends Ebina, then Tachibana, and finally with Kirie, who is at her house pampering the protagonist while enjoying an ice cream. Umaru asks her to eat one since she bought many and stored them in a small freezer. Later, Taihei prepares a delicious ice cream dessert for his sister, which she devours quickly. This makes him think that his sister is a very intelligent, beautiful, and responsible person in front of others, but once they're home, she turns into the complete opposite, making her difficult to deal with. Later, the young man finds Umaru's freezer, leading them to scold her. On a new day, Umaru is watching television. At that moment, she sees a car commercial and starts imagining what it would be like if she had one, since she could relax while traveling. For that reason, she asks her brother to buy one as he has a driver's license. Tai doesn't understand how she found out, but it was Bomber who told her. The boy tries to refuse, but sees that for the first time, Umaru is trying to leave the house and go to the beach. So the next day, they go to look at some cars, even though the young man doesn't like the salesman's energy. However, Umaru has already chosen her car, which is perfect, so she asks to take a test drive. Later, the siblings go out to test the car, although Taihei thinks it's too expensive and a bit big. But when he hears that his sister wants to invite her friends along for the ride, he agrees. Once in the car, Umaru gets comfortable for the journey, even noticing that there's a screen, which she turns on to watch television. She starts imagining the moments she could spend in it, but on the other hand, she sees that Taihei isn't comfortable as he fears making a mistake and hurting someone or his little sister. In the end, Umaru suggests they go to the beach in Bomber's car instead. Then Taihei calls Bomber to invite him to the beach so they can all go together in his car, and he agrees. However, Umaru says she can stay and relax at home as usual, but her brother starts packing to make sure he doesn't forget anything since he feels his sister is very excited. The next day, Taihei talks on the phone with his friend to pick them up while Ebina and Kirie wait. When Takashi arrives, Motoba is surprised to see his brother, as he didn't expect him to be friends with Taihei, so he tries to hide so his brother won't see him and discover his secret. Meanwhile, Bomber approaches her but doesn't recognize her. Then Umaru arrives in her more responsible version, which surprises Takashi because he didn't know Taihei had another sister. During the trip, Kirie wonders about her teacher since she didn't come, so she tries to ask Taihei, but when he says her name, Bomber gets agitated because it's the same name as his sister's, and because of this, the girl couldn't ask anything, which frustrates her. Ebina tries to talk to her, but when she sees Kirie's expression, she gets scared. Finally, the group arrives at their destination and decides to explore the island. Before that, Umaru sees Kirie enjoying the view and the place. Later, they go to have lunch, where Kirie hits her brother for looking at girls, even though the young man doesn't realize it's her. Afterward, Taihei is at the beach with Ebina, spending time, but Takashi appears and scares her. Meanwhile, Kirie is alone with Umaru and takes the opportunity to ask about her teacher, as she's worried she might be sick. The protagonist tries to tell her the truth, but is interrupted by Bomber, who is shouting. At that moment, Kirie confesses that Takashi is her brother, but he didn't recognize her because she changed her hairstyle. Although she says he is very distracted and always makes her angry, which is why she hits him. But since the time she hit him when he visited her at her school, everyone started to fear him. Umaru is surprised to hear this but thanks her for being honest. Next, the group goes to the aquarium, where Umaru tells Kirie that she knows she wanted to go because her little sister told her, although she mentions that Komaru couldn't come due to an important matter, which makes her friend happy. At that moment, Takashi says he would have liked to bring his sister because she likes fish, but she's a person who always hits him, even when he went to see her at her school, and maybe it was better not to go. Motoba tries to say she's there, but Ebina interrupts and says that all the girls like it when their brothers visit their school to accompany them, which excites Bomber, who says he wishes she were his sister. This annoys Kirie, who hits her brother, although no one knows why. Then the girls enjoy the water, but Tachibana shows up and recognizing the girls asks Umaru to have a competition. However, the girl just asks to spend time together since they are on vacation, so they spend the day playing in the water. Later, the girls promise they will hang out together again since they had so much fun. Then the group returns home and Taihei is happy that his sister enjoyed herself. The next day, the group returns from work and Takashi says he's very tired and wishes he could go back to the beach. But Taihei tells him they have to wait for another day off. When the young man gets home, Umaru asks where he would like to go next time, suggesting the mountains. However, she's once again being lazy and asks her brother to go buy the new volume of her favorite series, although if he had done it on his way back from work, he would have saved time, which annoys the young man. OVA 1. On a new day, Umaru is watching television when she suddenly sees an advertisement promoting a giant pillow for relaxation and rest. Seeing the phone number, she decides to call, but at that moment, Taihei appears and turns off the TV, asking her not to call to waste money on unnecessary things. She invents that she actually wanted to call the host because they are friends, which the young man does not believe. However, that night, Umaru dreams that her brother wakes her up saying he made a purchase, which is the useless pillow, although she doesn't remember it being called that. The moment her brother uses it, he becomes lazy. Later, the girl appears in another commercial, where they present a new pillow that adjusts to the owner's needs and can even take orders, but it turns out to be her stuffed animal, which she likes a lot. Upon waking up, Umaru runs to hug her stuffed animal, saying she had forgotten about it, but it's important to her because it was the prize her brother won for her. However, she then remembers that's not true, as the one he won was given to Ebina, and she had to buy one online. During class, Ebina approaches Tachibana, noticing she looks very happy. As usual, Sylphynford forgets her classmate's name but comments that she is happy because she will spend the day with her new friend, who used to be a rival. Umaru hears this and thinks about it, then tells Kirie that she should leave. Later, Tachibana looks for Umaru at the game store because she wants to spend the day with her, but they stop by a shop where the protagonist decides to buy a drink. However, she sees there's a raffle with her favorite character figures as prizes, so despite not having much money, she decides to play. She puts in all her energy and tries not to think about it too much since there are many people waiting. Despite her hopes, she wins a very bad prize, though Tachibana tells her she will win for her. Still, she isn't happy with her prize and leaves a bit disappointed. However, Tachibana is very pleased with the prize, so they decide to share it. A few days later, the Doma siblings go out for a barbecue, and both are excited, since it's been a while since they've had this treat. They can do it this time because Taihei has been paid, but they both feel sad because they wish they could invite Ebina, but they couldn't since she wasn't home. After this, they decide to start eating, but the young man asks his sister if he can cook the meat, which she agrees to. While the siblings are about to start cooking, Ebina is on the other side of the place, having come just to enjoy some delicious meat. She starts cooking the food delicately and enjoys every bit of it, while the siblings struggle with theirs as their seasoning falls apart or the meat ends up burnt. Still, they try to enjoy the day. Later, the boys go to pay the bill, but the siblings and Ebina run into each other at the place. The next night, Taihei returns home after work, but upon entering, he finds Umaru dressed as a wolf trying to scare him. The boy realizes it's October and Halloween, so he hands his sister a candy, which she thinks is too little. But when Taihei opens the cupboard, he sees Kirie hiding, which scares him. The girls tell him they have been eating candy since early on, but then remembered it's Halloween in October, so they decided to dress up. This makes the young man decide to go out again, while the girls think Taihei isn't dressed up, so they plan to prepare something for him. Later, the young man surprises the girls with a grand feast with pumpkin as the main ingredient, even a delicious pumpkin pie. But then he notices his cooking apron is stained with red liquid, prompting Umaru to say it's part of her disguise, since he is a chef who defeats zombies. In the morning, Umaru feels nostalgic as she wishes she could return to summer vacation, but since it's autumn, she wishes for some natural disaster that declares a state of emergency. The next day, Taihei asks his sister to get up, but she claims to feel unwell, and after checking her temperature, the young man leaves for work, asking her to stay in bed. However, it was all planned by the girl to skip school, but after spending the day at home, she starts to regret it as she feels bored. So during the third hour of class, Umaru returns saying she feels better, which makes her classmates happy to see her again. That night, Umaru confesses to her brother that she cheats to make the thermometer show she has a fever, which annoys Taihei. OVA 2. A few days later, Umaru sees a date marked on her calendar and remembers that it's Taihei's birthday. She recalls that when she spoke with her brother, he said he didn't want anything, but then she feels he might have meant that he does want something after all. To figure out what to give him, she calls Ebina, who surprises her by remembering her brother's birthday. Ebina suggests getting him something practical since he works a lot, but Umaru thinks that's not a good idea. Then Doma says it doesn't have to be something handmade since it wouldn't be too extravagant, which makes Ebina blush because she wanted to give him something like that. However, Nana suggests they could do something together as a good gift, so she invites her friends to spend the day with them. But Ina opposes, saying it's something they should do alone, although she blushes and Umaru notices that Ina has something in her hand. Nana then confesses that she knitted something for Taihei. That night, the clock strikes 12 and Umaru wakes up quickly to celebrate the birthday, but her brother is asleep and doesn't hear her, so she has no choice but to jump on him. In the morning, Taihei is waiting for his sister, and when she arrives, he asks why they didn't go out together. She wanted to surprise him and wish him a happy birthday, but he feels his sister is acting strangely. Later, the kids go out to explore the city, and Umaru tries to do things that her brother likes, but he suggests they can go play games since they are nearby. The girl gets excited but tries not to get carried away. However, Taihei tells her she doesn't need to act differently and can be herself and do what she wants. Umaru quickly returns to normal and treats her brother as usual, even though she wanted to be a good sister for a day. Summer vacation arrives and the four friends plan to do something together. Tachibana suggests going to the beach, which isn't a bad idea, but they know the boys will be working, so they need to plan something together. That night, the protagonist feels anxious because she thinks she's hiding secrets from her friends, so she holds a meeting with her other versions to talk. She feels it's the right time to tell the truth, but just as she's about to make a decision, her brother arrives and she completely forgets about it. Although later she sees a flyer for a new pool in the city. The next day, the girls gather and go to the pool called Hawaii, and all four are excited. Although Ebina seems a bit uncomfortable, even though Umaru said the night before that she was determined to tell them the truth. Later, after the girls change, they arrive at the large pool, but Kirie hears some boys wanting to approach them because they think Umaru is very cute. However, with her ominous glare, she manages to scare them all away by saying she must take care of her friend, although she notices that Umaru seems a little sad. The friends then go down the slide, which they enjoy, but they remember that Ebina can't swim and gets a bit dizzy from it. Throughout the day, the girls have fun enjoying different attractions, and even Ebina ends up having a great time with her friends. However, Umaru stops for a moment and apologizes to her friends, saying she has something to tell them but asks them not to be angry. Meanwhile, in her mind, her other versions are panicking because this could ruin the friendship she has with the girls, so they need to think it over. But Umaru is determined to the point that she starts feeling sad and tells them she has a secret. At that moment, Kirie remembers that Doma tried to tell her something but couldn't, so she stops Umaru and says it's not necessary to share their secrets since everyone has them, and that doesn't make them bad friends. Both Tachibana and Ebina agree, which makes Umaru excited, and she tells the girls that she loves them. That night, the girl tells her brother that she didn't end up telling the truth after all, which he thinks is fine since he doesn't believe it's necessary because all the versions of herself that her friends know are now part of her. He even tells her that he has secrets with his friends, which annoys Umaru since he never told her before. Season 2. After a few days, Taihei tells his sister that he has to go to work but will be back the next day, so he asks her to take care of herself. However, the girl says it was her day off and she wanted to spend it together, but her company is evil since it is its employees. That night, Umaru wishes her brother would scold her, but she remembers he isn't there, so she speaks freely without fear of being reprimanded. At that moment, she feels hungry, so she opens the fridge since her brother left her food, but upon seeing salted peppers, she is disappointed. She ends up eating ramen and later fries with her favorite drink while thinking about the things Taihei might say to her. Later, she notices time hasn't passed and she doesn't know what to do, so she lies down for a moment and unknowingly falls asleep. When she wakes up, she sees that she has slept for 16 hours as a consequence of staying up late. Then Taihei returns from work and finds his sister outside getting some fresh air, to which she welcomes him. The next day, Taihei asks his sister to get ready to go out, but she doesn't want to. The young man reminds her that the owner of the place might be waiting for her to show up. Then the siblings meet the man who gives them some orders since he can't do the gardening chores. They go to the garden and see Ebina there, cutting the grass by hand because she says she's used to it since it reminds her of home, while Taihei wishes his sister had that kind of willingness to help. Afterward, the kids tidy up the place and Umaru gets excited about pulling weeds. However, one of them accidentally hurts her, so she asks her brother if they can go home. But seeing her friend still working, she decides to stay and later they enjoy a drink together. Umaru notices that Ebina is blushing but thinks it's due to the heat, although it's actually because she's near Taihei. One morning, Umaru is hanging out with Tachibana, who tells her she needs to practice because a soccer match is approaching and she has to beat her rival. The protagonist remembers the match and makes some moves that astonish Sylphyn, and she takes the opportunity to ask for help. Then, Umaru realizes she can be herself in her disguise, so she trains to teach her friend some tricks and how to play the sport. After a few days, it's the day of the match, where the protagonist is the captain of her team. But she soon sees that her team is full of students she doesn't know. Kirie explains that this is how they formed the teams since they didn't want to compete against classes and decided to choose the best students as captains. Now Umaru is worried because Tachibana appears as the captain of the rival team along with Ebina. As the match begins, Tachibana runs with the ball and tries to score her first goal, but she fails because Kirie intercepts her and now her team is taking control, which allows Umaru to score a goal and later Ebina causes an own goal. After a while, the match is in Umaru's favor, making Tachibana start to think they might lose. At that moment, she remembers what her friend Umaru told her: it's just a game and it's better to have fun. She asks her teammates for help to win instead of playing alone. However, Sylphyn's team ends up losing, which makes her feel bad. But when Umaru approaches, the girls come over with their captain and tell her that despite losing, it was a good game thanks to her and ask her to teach them how to play, which makes Tachibana happy. The next day, Umaru watches a TV show where girls easily become friends and she thinks it would be better if it were as easy as on TV, since being rejected breaks your heart and makes you. However, Taihei isn't sure about that because it sounds dramatic. To him, it's easy if you just have the courage, even though he doesn't actually have friends. The following day, Umaru is in her classroom and sees that both Sylphyn and Kirie have been chatting with other girls since the match, making her feel scared and embarrassed to talk to them and go home for fear of being rejected. However, when the protagonist is leaving home with Ebina, they notice Tachibana and Nana behind them, so Umaru gathers her courage and with a sweet smile asks if they want to go home together, to which the girls readily agree. After a few days, Taihei and his co-workers finish work, so Bomber invites himself over to his colleague's house for dinner. The guys take the opportunity to invite Alex, but he declines. However, later on, the co-workers arrive at Doma's house and Umaru, upon seeing the blonde guy, starts thinking because she feels she has seen him before. At dinner, Taihei talks about autumn, which drives both Umaru and Alex crazy as they say it's the season of Anime in the Anime Music Festival. At that moment, the guys are surprised by their colleague's behavior, who usually comes off as a bit serious with them. But Umaru starts to suspect that she's seen this attitude before and remembers Tachibana, who mentioned that her older brother liked Japanese culture. She even realizes they look alike. The girl is astonished to find him in her house, but she isn't too interested since she enjoys watching the televised festival with the young man. At the end of dinner, Alex says goodbye to his colleagues and Umaru, expressing his surprise at all she knows about Anam and plans to see her again, while she is surprised he isn't a slacker. Once outside, Alex calls to inform that he has met Umaru Doma. The next day, Umaru is using a cotton swab to scratch her ear, but her brother asks her to put it away once she's done. However, the following morning, he wakes up and accidentally breaks Umaru's swab, promising to buy her another one on the way home. When the girl wakes up, she searches the whole house for her swab but starts to panic since her ear itches even more. Meanwhile, Taihei finishes work early and explains what happened to his coworkers. Bomber tells him that his sister is probably suffering because of it. When he returns home, he realizes Bomber was right, and to alleviate her itching, the guys bought several swabs with different functions, but Umaru chooses the same one she had. In the end, Taihei cleans his little sister's ears, while Bomber mentions that mothers do that with their small children, bringing a wave of nostalgia to the moment, which fades when Takashi asks his friend to clean his ears later. A few days later, Umaru walks through the school halls and overhears some students talking about rumors about her, leaving her puzzled throughout the day as she doesn't know where they're coming from. While she is gaming, Tachibana shows up and invites the protagonist to her house. Later, when the girls arrive, Sylphyn takes her friend to the library in her house so they can study for the upcoming exams. Umaru feels uncertain since they go to the same school and she might discover her secret. But then she starts recalling the rumors and remembers Tachibana said similar things about what students are inventing about her, making her laugh as she now understands where the rumors came from. It's cleaning day and Taihei is ready to start, explaining that cleaning is like detoxification for the soul. Still, he asks Umaru to be more organized, but she opposes it, believing it's unnecessary since she'll just mess it up again. If the place stays clean, her brother might get bored. Later, the guys start cleaning, first putting everything lying on the floor in its place, then searching for new spaces for the remaining items. Taihei notices that his sister's DVDs are all mixed up because she doesn't want to waste time organizing them. Finally, they throw away what's useless, and the place ends up clean. The next day, Umaru is playing video games but gets bored and decides to play something else. However, noticing that all the DVDs are in the wrong place, she decides to organize them, leading Taihei to feel down and bored the next day since there's nothing to do now that the place is still clean. A few days later, the friends go out to the movies and Ebina suggests grabbing a bite to eat before the film, but they see that Tachibana has already bought popcorn, so they must watch the movie first. The girls can't decide which film to choose, so Sylphyn makes a suggestion, but it's not a good option. She then says she'll come back another day and it will be with UMR. Later, the girls choose a movie, but when the lights go out, Kirie starts to get scared of the darkness, while Tachibana falls asleep and Ebina worries about her stomach not making noise, which allows the protagonist to enjoy the movie without her friends suspecting her tastes. One morning, Umaru and Kirie spend time resting, while Motoba thinks he's in a peaceful room, but his room is irritable. Then the girls hear the sound of the door, and when the protagonist opens it, she finds Alex. The young man shows Umaru the video game he brought where they must level up in a love story. Both the protagonist and the young man are entertained, but Kirie is very nervous and uncomfortable just watching them play. However, a problem arises in the game where they must choose one of the options, so Motoba suggests that the character talk to the person they like, but Alex disagrees. They decide to save the game and look at the two options, which surprises the boy since Kirie was right, making her happy. The next day, Umaru approaches Motoba and thanks him for playing with her younger sister, inviting her to return home together, which makes his companion blush, and she ends up accepting. A new game has come out in the city that keeps Umaru entertained, so Taihei asks her to try to rest once she finishes. However, as the days go by, the young man notices that his sister hasn't slept for days because she's absorbed in the game, which starts to worry him, and he tries to get her to stop, but he can't. The next day, as Taihei heads to work, he sees many people playing that game. Even Alex arrives late to work because of it, noticing he has the same eyes as Umaru. Later, the boy meets Ebina and takes the opportunity to ask her for advice on how to get someone to stop playing the trendy video game. She doesn't know what to tell him since if she liked something, she wouldn't stop either, but maybe he could find something they like. This advice gives Taihei an idea, and the next day he comes home with a new game for Umaru, which they will both play. After an hour, he teaches her that it's better to take it slow in the game process, as this way they enjoy it more and have time for other things. After a month, they make a lot of progress, and his sister forgets about the previous game. However, just when everything seems to be going well, the old game releases its second version, causing Umaru to become interested in it. A few days later, Bomber tells Umaru that Taihei was feared by the high school students because he was mean, and they called him the demon, which she doesn't believe, and Doma asks him to stop lying. However, Takashi says he lied about some things, although there were people who called him that since he always got good grades. Taihei decides to go eat, so Bomber asks the girl about Ebina because he wants to see her because she's nice, unlike his sister, who probably has no friends due to her bad temper, even though Umaru knows that's not true. Then the protagonist starts playing, causing her brother to come out of the kitchen. Seeing that it's raining, he begins to pick up the clothes but warns both of them not to touch the kitchen. However, they ignore him and go there to try the food, but Taihei stops them, very annoyed because he gave them an order and they didn't obey, so the boys apologize. Later, the three enjoy a delicious dinner while Bomber says it's the first time he's seen his friend angry. The next day, Kirie goes to Umaru's house since she asked her to play. The girl arrives happily but sees that Alex is also there and begins calling her the cold and pointy girl. The young man starts giving gifts to his new friends. He gives Umaru a decoration similar to the one her brother had, while he gives Kirie an uncollectible figure, which she doesn't want and doesn't know how to refuse. She thinks about giving it to her teacher, but seeing it's indecent, she takes the gift and leaves. On the way, she thinks about what to do with it and tries to throw it in the trash, but then remembers that no one has ever given her a gift. After reflecting on her uncelebrated Christmases and her teacher, she decides to accept it. The next day, Umaru sees a hamburger commercial and craves one, so she spends every day thinking about it to the point that she accidentally responds hamburgers to her friends when they ask something else. Tachibana suggests going out to eat as it reminds her of home. Later, the girls arrive at the restaurant and place their orders. Once they try the hamburgers, Umaru says she loves them and would like to be at home eating peacefully. But when she returns to reality, she also enjoys the company of her friends, seeing that they are having a great time with the food, and even Ebina orders a lot of them. Christmas is approaching and Taihei asks his sister what cake he could prepare. She replies that she will spend Christmas with her friends so he doesn't need to worry about cooking, which makes him feel a bit... She tries to cheer him up. In the following days, the young man tells his friends that he will be making Christmas dinner, and Bomber comments that he is an excellent brother, almost like a father. Since the boy has nothing to do, he asks Alex if he would like to do something, and Alex mentions an Anon concert. Upon hearing this, Taihei decides to go too and let his sister spend time with their friends. On Christmas Eve, the friends gather at the train station and wonder if it's okay that Ebina isn't going to her hometown. She explains that it's a tradition, but she enjoys being with them. Tachibana gets excited because she wants to start celebrating, while Kirie feels excited inside about spending Christmas with Umaru. The girls stroll around the city admiring the Christmas decorations, while Taihei is at the concert and wonders what he's doing there. However, both Alex and Bomber are having a good time. Later, Tachibana asks her friends if they have someone special to spend Christmas with, but everyone shakes their heads. She invites them to her house to spend the remaining time together. Once at Sylphyn's house, Umaru notices an extra pillow, and her friend explains it's because she invited a friend named Umaru, whom she met a while ago. Umaru taught her how to be more friendly, allowing her to connect with her classmates for fun rather than competing with them. Although Umaru doesn't remember this happening, she later hears Tachibana say that she and Umaru have a lot in common, which brings them closer together as friends. At the end of the day, Sylphyn falls asleep, while the others prepare to go home. Umaru decides to leave a note for her, just like the others, so she can read it when she wakes up. When the girls return home, the protagonist receives a message from Tachibana and realizes that due to the holidays, the message didn't come through earlier because it took time to arrive. She asks Ebina to go home alone while she returns to her friend's house to fetch something she forgot. However, when Ebina gets home, she runs into Taihei, who suggests they go back together since his sister left her alone. On the way, a child mentions that they look like a couple, making Ebina blush. She then remembers that her classmates said if she ever needed advice, she should ask, so Ebina stops and tries to talk to the boy. Meanwhile, Tachibana has a dream where she recalls her childhood and the time Santa visited her and asked what she wanted for Christmas. She says she wants friends, which confuses Santa. Alex later comments that it's normal for Santa to be confused because friends are hard to come by, but they can be made through a computer and social media. He mentions he will soon travel to Japan to meet a friend he met online, and he's also going to study there. The girl gets excited but begins to think that maybe her brother feels as lonely as she does. Not wasting time, she starts browsing the internet, discovering the world of anime and video games. And for the next Christmas, she asks for a controller for her game. When the girl wakes up, she notices her friends are gone, realizing they have gone home. However, she sees that each of them left a note saying they had a great time together. At that moment, Umaru arrives dressed as Santa and Tachibana gets excited to see her, grateful for her good friends. The new year begins, and when Taihei wakes up, he gives his younger sister a gift. Although she tries to thank him, she notices he is still half asleep. Later at lunch, the young man gives her an envelope, which makes her suspicious that something is off since Taihei can't be this generous. She begins to think it might be a lucky day, like when a soda machine accidentally gives you 2 cans instead of 1, or when you win 2 plush toys with just 1 coin, a claw machine. She starts to enjoy the thought that he might have given her 2 allowances for the year. Later, Ebina knocks on the door and wishes Taihei a happy new year, saying she hopes to be helpful to him this year too. They both blush as they remember the Christmas night when they walked back together. Taihei tells her he has a gift for her, but when he goes to get it, he realizes Ebina's envelope is missing, prompting Umaru to try not to draw attention. Then the boy attempts to talk to his sister, and she explains that she wants to tell him about soda machines. A few days later, Umaru and Ebina head to class and talk about Taihei. The protagonist says he always scolds her for trivial things, but in reality it's because she always has a mess in her room. Meanwhile, Ebina envisions something normal and says she thinks Taihei is a very kind person who knows how to listen, leaving Umaru confused. Meanwhile, at work, the young man is called to a meeting, which according to his colleagues makes him happy. Back home, Umaru continues to ponder her friend's comments, recalling how she always bothers her brother, even though he is always good to her. That night, she decides to do something nice for him and tries to keep him relaxed. However, Taihei tells her he needs to share something important. He has to go on a work trip because he was chosen for it. Umaru feels anxious because he will leave her alone and pleads with him not to go, thinking it will be for a long time. But when she learns it's only for 2 weeks, she gets annoyed and tells her brother not to make such a fuss over 2 weeks. The next day, Taihei packs his bags for the trip, so Umaru says that she will be fine for those 2 weeks since she can take care of herself, and if she orders pizzas, that will be fine too. Even though her brother prepared a lot of meals for her to have for dinner, she assumes that eating alone won't be enjoyable, so he gives her a bill to buy and order whatever she likes. Umaru is surprised by this, but it's only for necessary things. Bomber arrives, and upon seeing the bill, he says it's not enough money for 2 weeks, so Taihei hands his sister a larger bill. Then Bomber talks about wanting to eat eel during the trip, which piques Umaru's curiosity about what eel is. Takeshi explains to Umaru that Taihei's project is to create a restaurant management system, so they will go to another city to gather more information. However, now Umaru wants to go with them to eat eel, but that's not possible. The next day, Taihei's team sets out for their business trip along with Kanao, who the others don't know went because she wanted to spend time with Doma. On the train, Taihei starts looking at the ocean and thinks that maybe his sister would have liked to come, so he plans to bring her next time. However, Umaru is right in front of him since she wanted to come to eat eel. When they arrive at their destination, the young man doesn't know how to tell his companions that his sister is there because it could cause problems. Then Kanao mentions that she confused the schedules, so now they have free time and they suggest visiting some restaurants for the future. The girl starts imagining that it refers to a wedding, which excites her, and she agrees. Later, the team splits up and Taihei takes his sister to explore the area since it's still early to eat. The girl is thrilled because there are places inspired by anime. Later, they arrive at a tourist spot and the siblings touch a statue because there's a saying that if 2 people touch it at the same time, good things can happen. However, nothing happens, leading the boy to think it might refer to a couple, which annoys Umaru. She asks who the girl accompanying them is, and the young man explains that they were classmates in the past and that she's his boss since she's the CEO's daughter. Taihei wonders if she went on the trip just for that. Later, the siblings reach the restaurant and Umaru is enchanted by the eel dish, while Taihei tells her he's happy she came with him. However, the girl returns home still thinking about what her brother asked her, while the young man goes back to his group to head to the restaurant they agreed upon. Meanwhile, the chef takes advantage of the boys' presence and has them peel potatoes. Many days before, on Christmas, Taihei was with Ebina heading home, but the girl stops for a moment to tell him she wants to find a restaurant where his brother works. Currently, Taihei's team has gotten used to the kitchen and the place where they've been spending the weeks, but during lunch, the chef asks Taihei if he has cooked before, as he can see how careful he is, as if he's cooking for someone else. The young man replies that he does it for his younger sister, but he doesn't expect the chefs to invite him to be part of their team and work in the restaurant. Although it's something he enjoys, he can't accept because he can't be away from home for long. Meanwhile, Umaru has a slight feeling that someone is talking about her. However, the chef takes off his hat, blushing because he was nice for the first time, which makes Taihei notice that the boy is wearing the same headband as Ebina, and even his chef is named that way. Doma remembers that his neighbor said she was looking for a restaurant where her brother worked, but he didn't know anything about it, although Taihei really doesn't know if it's about him. When the trip finally ends, the team returns home, and Taihei thinks a lot has happened, but for Kanao, nothing has. When Doma gets home, he finds his place all messy, so Umaru apologizes, but he had asked her not to make such a mess. He has no choice but to clean everything up despite being tired. Later, the siblings go out to deliver the gifts that Taihei brought for his friends. However, at the end of the day, Umaru sees her brother and starts crying, saying she felt lonely with his absence. On a new day, there is a competition among all the schools where Kirie competes and achieves third place. In class, her classmates congratulate her for catching up with the third-year students, but Kirie appears very nervous, grabs her briefcase, and leaves the place. This leads them to think that it might be too much pressure for her to be a swimmer. Later, Kirie visits Umaru and shows her the certificate for third place. Umaru congratulates her and says that, like in the game of life, she could become a professional swimmer. However, she notices that Kirie seems a bit uncomfortable, suggesting that she may not like compliments. Still, seeing her teacher distressed, Motoba tries to calm her down, which causes her briefcase to fall. Umaru then sees a book with Kirie's image on it, prompting her classmate to confess that she actually wants to be a book author. This makes Umaru happy, and she asks if she can read the book Kirie made about her. It is March 5 and Tachibana arrives at school dressed in a kimono, saying it's the day girls can wear kimonos. Her friends remind her that that day has already passed, but to avoid making her feel bad, they decide to dress up like her and take a picture together. Sylphyn takes them to her house to meet her mother, who is a champion kimono maker. She gives them all beautiful outfits, and they spend the day together enjoying food. Umaru and Ebina comment on how kind and lovely Tachibana's mother is, also noting that she looks very young. Tachibana almost reveals her mother's age, but her mother appears and stops her. After a few days, Kirie visits Umaru to show her new pages she's made about her, and Umaru is thrilled, saying they look like the books sold in stores. However, Motoba mentions that she hasn't yet captured her teacher's tenderness and beauty, asking her to be a model. Umaru finds this difficult because she doesn't know how to act, but after spending the whole day behaving normally, Kirie says she still can't achieve it. At that moment, Taihei arrives and Kirie quickly hides everything. Umaru then shows a sweet gesture towards her brother, which is what Motoba wanted to capture, so she says she needs to go home to keep drawing. A new restaurant is opened in the city, so Taihei suggests to his sister that they go after shopping, but Umaru just says she wants to sleep. Later, the young man goes shopping and runs into Ebina, which surprises him since they live in the same neighborhood. She mentions she wants to visit the new restaurant because she thinks her brother might be there, and Taihei recalls meeting a chef with the same last name as her. Later, the group is at the mall and sees Kirie shopping. They approach her, but she tries to disappear, feeling nervous because she has colored markers in her hands to keep drawing and cannot confess that she wants to be an author for fear of being laughed at. Ebina notices her behavior and tries to cover for her. Just then, Umaru arrives because her brother went out to eat alone. The young man notices Ebina's intentions and tells her she is very kind, which makes her blush. Later, the four of them go to eat at the restaurant, and Kirie notices that Ebina feels nervous when Taihei looks at her. That night, the siblings couldn't sleep due to the heat. Umaru asks her brother to turn on the air conditioning, but he refuses. No matter how hard she tries to convince him, she can't succeed. During the night, she complains about the heat, but then sees her brother take out a fan so they can have a more comfortable night. After stargazing, she falls asleep. However, the next day, they both realize they didn't sleep well because there was an insect bothering them. A few days later, Kirie is about to go out to meet her friends, but before she leaves, she watches her horoscope on TV, which says she will have a special day with someone special. Later, the friends are waiting for Umaru to arrive, but when Kirie gets excited and tries to run to greet her, she trips and falls to the ground. Then the girls are on the bus heading to the amusement park. Tachibana says it's her first time traveling on public transport, so she's excited, although she wants to get to the park to ride the roller coaster. Ebina wants to go on the carousel while both Umaru and Kirie want to go on the teacups. Once they arrive, the girls take a photo for their VIP credentials, but Motoba sees that her picture looks a bit creepy, so she leaves for a moment. However, when she takes too long, she tries to run back and trips over her shoelaces. Just as she is about to fall, Alex saves her. Tachibana introduces her friends to her brother, which surprises Kirie. The boy says he came for the Enime festival, but before leaving, he gives each of them a gift he won. Sylphyn wonders if Kirie knows his brother, but she tries to hide that she does, though it doesn't work well. Later, the girls enjoy some rides, but Tachibana wants to wait in line for the roller coaster, even though Kirie wanted to invite Umaru to the teacups but couldn't. However, despite waiting in line, the staff member prohibits them from entering because Kirie doesn't meet the height requirement, which makes her feel bad. As she walks away, she starts to think she's having a bad day. At that moment, her hair gets messy because her hair tie breaks, so she starts to scream and Umaru takes her to the Ferris wheel to help her fix her hair. There, Motoba apologizes to her friend, thinking the girls are having a bad day because of her and that it must be boring to be with her. However, Doma says she's having a lot of fun and they still have the teacups to ride, after which the girls enjoy the teacups. A few days later, Umaru tells her brother that she will receive an award at school for her grades, which surprises Taihei as he didn't expect a lazy person to win an award. However, the girl isn't very interested in the prize. The next day, the girls congratulate their friend on her award, including Tachibana, who initially saw the protagonist as her rival. However, she insists she's happy for Umaru, saying her achievement feels like her own as ever since she started hanging out with the girls, she sees everything differently. Later, the ceremony begins, and after Umaru receives her award, a girl named Hikari Kongo receives a certificate, which seems very familiar to the protagonist, making her suspect she has seen her before. The next day, Umaru spends time with Kirie and Alex watching anime. The young man is excited to know what happens next in the plot, but Motoba feels jealous of the relationship he has with his teacher, thinking he might be plotting something and that she needs to protect her. However, Umaru asks her friend if he has friends in Germany, to which he replies that he spent his time in his room watching anime, so it was hard for him to go out and meet people. But then someone came along and changed his world, and he got to know many people, both at work and now with her and the cold girl. The girls watch him, finding it strange, but Umaru suggests they pose like the girls from anime, and Kirie decides to join them even though it's not her taste. Later, Alex goes home, but on the way he gets a call and quickly visits his boss, Kanao, who tells him that his little sister Hikari received an award. Because of this, the young man wants to celebrate, but the girl doesn't want to. She also mentions to Kanao that she spent time with Umaru and that Taihei wasn't there. One morning, Ebina returns home, but it's very hot, so she starts to remember when she was little and had a heat stroke that landed her in bed. Her brother made her a delicious soup to help her recover and told her to rest. When she tries to thank him, she realizes that her brother is no longer there, so that was her last memory of him. Although she knows very well where he is, she decided to come to Japan to look for him. But upon arriving, she runs into Taihei and sees that he looks a lot like her brother, not just on that occasion, but in every moment she shares with Taihei. After the memory, Ebina crosses paths with her neighbor and gets nervous, so she runs into her house, but she feels happy to have him by her side. On a new day, Kirie returns home after spending time with Umaru, but when she arrives, her brother tells her that they will be alone for a few days since everyone is going to their mother's hometown. This displeases Kirie, who later mentions it to Umaru. Umaru then tells her that if she has any problems, she can stay over in her house. After discussing it with Taihei, the girls will spend the night together while the young man goes out with Bomber, who claims to know they are siblings. That night, the girls spend the evening watching anime and playing games. Later, they go to bed, and Kirie starts to remember a bit of her childhood when her brother took great care of her. But then she hears her friend dreaming about her and begins to relate it to her storybook. The next day, Kirie returns home happy, while the friends stay up all night because Taihei told Takashi that his sister was on the trip, which greatly depresses him since he knows she's growing up. The following day, Umaru is with Kirie reading some manga, but the protagonist notices her friend is very focused on the book, so they both start reading. They end up frustrated because their romantic storyline is unresolved, and they have to wait for the next volume to come out. Umaru suggests they support their love, but Motoba associates it with Ebina and Taihei, saying he can't do that. However, Umaru gives him advice saying he should believe in whatever he wants to believe. Later, when Kirie returns home, she encounters Ebina and asks if she likes Umaru's brother. The girl blushes and doesn't know how to respond, but Motoba tells her he will support them, and from that moment on, he helps her to win him over. After a few days, Taihei asks his sister to do something since it's summer, but she refuses, although she admits she has changed a bit. He then suggests inviting her to see the fireworks and say it will be really good, and there will even be food stalls. Umaru agrees but proposes to invite her friends, which the young man has no problem with. Meanwhile, Kirie is at Ebina's house since the girl decided to help her with Taihei. She suggests inviting him to the fireworks festival since it would be something romantic. Just then, there's a knock at the door, and it's the Doma siblings. They visit Tachibana, who agrees to go, but first gives each of her friends a kimono to dress appropriately. Later, the boys arrive at the festival and enjoy the evening with games and food, and finally, they watch the fireworks. When school starts again, the friends gather for lunch. Ebina tells Umaru that the principal was looking for her to return a certificate that had been on display, and they begin to talk about someone who received a certificate 10 years ago for their grades. The protagonist wonders if it was her brother since, according to Bomber, he was good at school. However, the girls begin to say that Taihei is a good guy, kind and caring towards her, which leaves his sister thinking. Later, the protagonist returns home and encounters her brother. She tries to surprise him from behind, but before she can, Hikari appears and hugs Taihei, leaving them both surprised and confused. When the three are at the Doma house, Taihei says he will prepare dinner, but Hikari seizes the moment to tell Umaru that the young man is hers, leaving her confused about what is happening and annoyed by it. Later, the boy recognizes the girl and says she is his boss's sister. However, she decides to leave, giving Umaru a look that declares war on her. Umaru feels upset and a bit sad about what happened, while Hikari is happy to have found Taihei. One morning, Umaru is taking photos of her hamsters, but at that moment, Taihei arrives and shows his sister that Bomber gave him a camera he had stored away since he bought another one. The kids take the opportunity to take pictures, so Umaru tries to look as normal as possible to avoid revealing her true identity, but Taihei ends up looking terrible in the photos because of his sister. Then Umaru sees that the camera has old photos of Takeshi, but the boy takes the camera away, saying it's not right to look through them. So they switch the memory card and decide to take their own photos again, while Taihei remembers that his friend gave him the camera to have memories of his sister. The next day, Taihei returns the memory card to his friend but forgets that it has the photos the siblings took first, which makes Bomber laugh at his friend's picture. After a few days, Tachibana and Umaru go to the game store, but they find it closed for cleaning, so they decide to go somewhere else recommended by Sylphin. Later, they arrive at a retro apartment building where they can eat, play, and even stroll around, and this place becomes their new meeting spot. However, at night, Taihei tells his sister that it's an old building and is about to be closed down. The next day, the girls return and promise that the place won't close since there are no signs of that, even though it doesn't have much traffic. However, when Umaru returns, the building is being demolished, which makes her sad. After a few days, the four friends see that the place is completely empty, and at that moment, the protagonist realizes that Tachibana already knew this would happen, which is why she wanted to visit the place. Despite this, the friends decide to go to an amusement park to spend the day and have fun. The next day, Ebina visits Taihei to give him a bag of rice that her parents sent, and as a thank you, the siblings invite her to stay for dinner. The three of them try to think about what to do, and after deciding, Ebina starts helping the young man, remembering Kirie's advice that she should win his heart through his stomach. However, Umaru doesn't want her friend to think she can't cook, so she also helps. But her brother gives her simple tasks. Still, the protagonist accidentally creates a large flame that scares Ebina, who is about to have an accident, but Taihei saves her and gets upset with his sister for what she did, so the girl apologizes to her friend. After finishing cooking, they all enjoy dinner together. A few days later, Umaru waits for her brother at home for dinner, but when he arrives, he brings Hikari, saying they ran into each other, which the protagonist isn't too pleased about, but she has to endure it because her brother invited her to dinner. The girls start to argue, so Taihei listens and suggests they make pancakes, where each will make her own. However, it doesn't work out since both of them messed up, but still, the young man teaches them and prepares a delicious dessert while he eats what the girls made for him. Later, Hikari apologizes, confessing she ran into Umaru on purpose because she wanted to be with him. Umaru hears this, but then remembers that the girl had forgotten a certificate the first time she came, which Taihei congratulates her for, but the protagonist gets jealous, saying she also received one. One morning, Umaru plays with her hamsters, but Taihei arrives and asks her not to do that since she can't treat them like toys. Even animals can get stressed. The next day, Kirie agrees with her brother, saying even fish can feel it when they see so many people passing by. After several days, the kids have visits from all their friends, but then Umaru ends up exhausted and forgets about her pets, so Taihei tries to feed them, but they refuse. The next day, Umaru takes the animals out of their cage and brings them along to spend the day with her. But when she gets bored, she doesn't want to pressure them, even though they show her they want to play. A few days later, Umaru is at the game store and uses a technique to get a lot of candies from the machine, which ends up annoying the employees there. Later, the girl and Tachibana look for a place to eat everything, so the blue-haired girl invites her to her house. The protagonist agrees since she only got to see her library. Later, the girls are in her room and Umaru is surprised when her friend says she eats candies with her favorite drink, which reminds her of herself. However, they start talking about the Pookie game, which Tachibana tries to play with Umaru, but she refuses, saying it's not something friends would play, only someone special. This leads Sylphin to think that Umaru isn't her friend, so she explains that they can't play it and that they are friends. To change the subject, they start watching an anime and discuss the same game, at which point Tachibana understands why they can't play it, and she apologizes to her friend. That night, Taihei opens the door and Hikari is there because she wants to stay for dinner, but Umaru isn't very pleased. However, when they ask if Kana knows she's visiting at night, Hikari gets nervous since her sister doesn't know anything. The protagonist realizes this and uses it to have her brother call his boss and inform her, but the girl starts crying, saying that her sister usually works overtime and she eats alone. Umaru sympathizes with her because sometimes Taihei takes a while to come home, so she lets her finish dinner. When the girl leaves for home, she asks if she can keep coming over, and Umaru allows it but requests that it doesn't become a habit. Later, the girl gets home and is happy to have seen Taihei. However, Kanao arrives and says she found out that Hikari is going out every time she works overtime, and she scolds her. After a few days, Umaru and Tachibana are walking around the city when the blue-haired girl notices that the beauty shop is gone, which reminds her of when she was little and visited Japan, where she went to a small park with a swan boat and a lake. When Umaru hears her talking with such nostalgia, she tells her to take her there since it still exists. Then the girls arrive at the small park and Tachibana gets excited because everything is just as she remembered. But then she sees a girl whom her brother went to pick up, which reminds her of Alex and the time he promised that they would see each other again. After that, Umaru takes her to the lake, where she feels her friend hasn't said a single word. But the girl asks to ride the boats, and while they're there, Tachibana thanks Umaru for bringing her back, which the protagonist doesn't understand and perhaps thinks she just wanted to thank her for taking her. Exams are approaching and Tachibana is somewhat excited, but Ebina is very nervous because she says she might fail and have to repeat the year. However, this gives Sylphyn a great idea to have a study group at her house to help her friend. Later, the girls are in the library trying to help their friend as much as they can. After some tests, they realize she can pass, but Ebina confesses that she usually studies but gets nervous when she's in class. Umaru tells her that she might be suffering from anxiety, so to forget her surroundings, she should try to think of something she likes, but Ebina knows that won't work because she thinks of Taihei. Then, Ebina wonders why the girls are wasting their time with her instead of studying since there's only one day left. The girls tell her they do it because they're friends. This makes the girl remember when she first arrived at school and tried hard to make friends until she saw Umaru, a very kind person, wishing she could talk to her someday and be friends. However, in reality, she starts laughing because she enjoys being with them. After the exams, all the girls pass and decide to go home together, but on the way, they stop for some creeps. After a few days, Bomber is at home and notices that his little sister is not there, so he decides to take the opportunity to visit his friend. Meanwhile, Kirie is at Umaru's house and has brought some cookies to share, which she says she doesn't know where they came from. Then there's a knock at the door, and when Taihei opens it, they realize it's Bomber, who is surprised to see his sister there. Later, the Doma siblings leave Motoba's siblings alone to talk, but all Bomber says is that he is happy because his sister made a good friend, changing the atmosphere. At that moment, Umaru interrupts them and Kirie realizes that her brother calls his teacher by a different name that she doesn't like, and she starts to get angry. She also begins to resent that he didn't even recognize her on the trip, but the protagonist has to step in to prevent a fight and suggests they all play video games to pass the time. The next day, Taihei goes shopping and his sister asks him to buy a magazine. However, since the weather is bad and he is worried about getting wet, he makes a schedule of things he should do first. When he arrives, he decides to buy the magazine first, but he searches the entire bookstore without luck. He then runs into Kirie, who's also there. But in surprise, she runs away, leaving him thinking and ultimately deciding to leave the bookstore since he had been there before. After finishing his shopping, he exits the mall and sees that Kirie is still there, so they start talking. She confesses that she is writing a book about Umaru and wants to become a book author, through which she can show the world her teacher. Despite being embarrassed, she feels happy to have confessed and received support from him. At that moment, Umaru appears, feeling guilty for telling her brother it wouldn't rain, so she brings him an umbrella. Later, the siblings return home, and the protagonist notices that her brother is very happy, but then he remembers that he forgot to buy the magazine. On a new afternoon, the girls go to an ice skating rink, where Kirie has a new plan for Ebina to spend time with Taihei, since none of the previous ones worked. The plan is for Ebina and Taihei to skate together because she doesn't know how to do it while she spends time with Umaru. However, at that moment, Tachibana arrives, who is not part of the plan but is the best skater, and invites her friends to skate. The young man says he will stay and watch since he doesn't know how to skate, but the girls urge him to join, so the plan falls apart as Umaru teaches her brother while Kirie teaches Ebina. At that moment, Sylphyn appears to be a professional and challenges the protagonist to a competition, causing Taihei to lose his balance and end up holding onto Ebina. Out of nerves, she holds on tight and ends up in the area for professional skaters. Still, the girls end up having a lovely day, sharing other moments together. That night, Hikari visits Taihei again and prepares him a delicious cream soup, telling him that when his sister makes it, she usually burns it. So she gathers her courage and asks him to cook at her house. However, at that moment, Umaru also speaks up and says that there is no bread, so the young man looks for more, not realizing that his guest said something as well. After they finish eating, Taihei sees that it is dark, so Kirie tries to get him to accompany her home, but Umaru understands what she wants to do and jumps on her brother, and the three of them go out to the balcony to see the stars. The young man remembers that it was her to whom he taught about the stars. He starts recalling when he met her and began to feel that he is the right one to marry his sister, which is why that day he invited him to stay for dinner since Kana would prepare the meal, but he has many issues to sort out. The boys take the opportunity to watch the stars. This causes the girl to hug Taihei after a long time, although Umaru becomes nervous. At the end of the day, the siblings accompany the girl on her way, and then they say goodbye, where Umaru can't show that she's angry with her. In the evening, Taihei asks his sister what she wants to eat, and she says she wants pizza. So the boy starts thinking that he would need a big oven, but the girl wants to order it for delivery. However, Taihei thinks it's better to prepare things himself, which gives him an idea, and he goes to the kitchen while Umaru watches him cook like crazy. Then the doorbell rings, and it's Taihei's co-workers because he invited them over for dinner. When they return, they see that the table is ready, and they will enjoy a great feast that Taihei prepares according to everyone's taste, which pleases them all. But then Umaru remembers she wanted pizza, so she starts throwing a tantrum, but the boys don't pay attention to her. She then gives her opinion on the ingredients that the first dish should have. When Taihei allows his sister to flip the food, she says it will be a rematch of the pancake, while the others cheer her on. In the end, everyone is satisfied with the food, making Taihei happy. It's Christmas Eve, and Taihei asks his sister to clean up since Ebina will be spending Christmas with them. However, Umaru asks him to buy her an expensive gift since it's a collectible figure. Later, Ebina is with the protagonist and confesses that she bought a gift for Taihei, just like for her friend, which makes Umaru wonder why she bought something for her brother, even though she also wants to buy him one. Later, the girls go to the mall and start picking out a gift for Taihei from Umaru. Before that, Umaru gives her friend a hat, and when Ebina gives her gift, they realize they swapped hats. Then the young man arrives at the mall, and the girls surprise him with the gifts, for which he thanks them, but asks to go shopping together for dinner, as well as to buy gifts for each of them. A few days before, Kana starts thinking about her sister since she has been acting strangely. She remembers that when she was a child, she wished to see Taihei after meeting him, although she said it would be impossible because he was just a classmate who congratulated her for receiving recognition at school. This makes her want to be praised by him too. Years later, she gets the recognition, so Kana decides to give him her Christmas gift, which is to invite Taihei to dinner. But just as she is about to do it, she hesitates and cannot go through with it. When she returns home, she asks Hikari if she wants to rent movies and watch them together, which makes the girl realize that her younger sister saw her doing the same thing last Christmas, which seems somewhat. At the start of the new year, the friends gather at Tachibana's house wearing lovely kimonos borrowed from their moms. The girls are happy to spend the beginning of the year together, and after enjoying a delicious meal, Sylphyn proposes playing some old games that she has at home, surprising the others since it's rare to see such games nowadays. They decide to play in teams first, with Kirie setting the rules and warning that they are not the same as tennis rules. However, the girl wanted to be next to Umaru, but ended up playing with Ebina, so she decided to start. Tachibana loses, and Motoba says they will include punishments, leading the girls to continue playing with penalties for the losers. Throughout the day, they keep enjoying various Japanese games, not realizing that on a day like this, they would be together. After the new year, little Umaru received a lot of money as gifts from her friends, so she says that being a new year, she decided to change and save, keeping it in her piggy bank and taking out only a coin when she needs it. However, after a few days, she realizes that the piggy bank is empty because she remembers spending on different things, which starts to frustrate her. When Taihei sees her in that situation, he decides to give her a coin, but Umaru tells him that he should give her more since he doesn't spend on his hobbies because he doesn't have any, which annoys the young man, who ends up scolding his sister.